podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our quick publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Transfer Podcast with myself and my old mucker, Mr. Dave Davis. How are you going on?
Mate, I have got a Pepsi Max in hand. There's a Bushmills here off screen, which we won't put in to break any laws, but I am happy and I'm looking forward to this one, mate. Back in the groove.
It's the dream combo, and it's the dream combo. Drinks and podcasters alike. I actually have to say hats off for the Bushmills, buddy. Hats off. I like to see a man with a bit of whiskey taste. I didn't know that about you. That's excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And if we've got any comments for Bushmills and Pepsi Max, as we said last summer, sponsor us, you absolute cowards. That would be our message. So there you go.
Well, Cam Branch has been after, what's that, Dr. Pepper for about 2 years now. So no luck. We couldn't even get Spam to sponsor us. So here's where we're at this stage of our lives. But we do want to get straight into it. And Dave, you have prepared for us quite the detailed little itinerary for us to get ourselves traveling around here. We're going to start off with a story that will come back full circle at the end, because it's about our friends, the Saudis, and our actual friend, Mr. Mo Salah. And we're going to start, obviously, with Liverpool-related stories, if there are any. We might flag up in advance, Dave, that some people might be less than excited by what we're being told, but then at least there are some rumours, man, for us to talk about.
Yeah.
So the first one up is Mo. Now, you know it's going to happen as a matter of course. It's just going to happen. It's going to be, we're going to get closer and closer to the window, and then it's going to be a matter of Mo's heading away for the few weeks, and what if he gets influence and blah, 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 blah. We can see it coming. And there will be these conversations, these loop conversations about how much is a big enough offer. And the fact, I think, Dave, that Salah has proved himself to be so good this season in terms of his bottom line numbers, his goals, his assists. He's in outrageous form in terms of output, even if his general play hasn't been what, we know this wonderful footballer is capable of all the time. He's been incredibly, incredibly important for us. And I think this has boosted the profile, because Mo's one of those guys who, remarkably, Dave, goes under the freaking radar, if you can believe that, in terms of the assessment of his level. Do you fully expect this merry-go-round to start again with the will they, won't they?
Yeah, being honest, Trev, and sort of sounding people out, which I could feel the dread. I could hear it as people read the messages from me. They're like, oh, God, that tit's going to start harassing us as January approaches again, isn't he? But we're off. We're going again type of thing. But, yeah, when asked about this, I mean, to be honest, a few just giggled and said no chance, and a few said that the vibes that are coming back from the club, like utter clickbait nonsense. Mo Salah isn't going anywhere in January. God knows why you're asking. Not a chance. Simple as that.
You would like to think that that's the case, given where we are in terms of the current season, given where we are in terms of our progress and our hopes this season, which I think most people were certainly ahead of where most people thought we would be in the schedule. And if anything is to happen up this season, like I've said on numerous podcasts for the last 3-4 years, if we are going to win the thing, Mo has to be at his top form. And when we really needed that to be the case, when it came to the sharp end of that quadruple season, because he wasn't at that epic level that he can reach, we just didn't have enough around the rest of the team to push over that line, and that was a tragedy. This is not, like, let's be clear on this. This is not laying any blame at Mo Salah's feet. This is simply saying, I think we're a lot more reliant on him to win trophies than people understand, and him being at his very, very best. And so when I hear talk about replacing Mo and we can just do this and that, and you don't replace him directly, you replace him with different people, and okay, cool, evolution. But I don't want to think about those days, Dave. And so it's quite revealing that that's the general gist you're getting, that no, there's no chance that the club will entertain anything as ludicrous as allowing him to go midway through a season. Now, we do also have a very real life issue in terms of one of our loanees, Mr. Carvalho, who, you know, there was a lot of speculation, Dave, at the time, including on our show, as to whether or not this was a wonderful move for him. Because, yeah, we said, okay, this is a good club. Is he going to play? And if he doesn't play, what is the point of a loan? Especially a loan which is not as easily monitorable, if that's a word, as maybe a championship or whatever type loan would be.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a mess. It has not worked out well. I think his total minutes are, you know, almost comical. But there are other people in the whole loan circle as well, Bobby Clark, and there may even be one or two heading out. And I see here you've mentioned Ben Doak. I've heard those rumours too. Maybe you might fold Tyler Morton in here into this whole chat too. So there's a lot going on there. At least 4 players to address: the Carvalho situation, Clark, Doak and Morton.
Yeah, it's all ramping up, isn't it? The loan talk, and understandable, because they've got to start making plans and next moves. And it literally works in terms of that spectrum. I mean, Tyler Morton at Hull has been a great success. That's been really good for the club. It's added to his value, kept his profile. I mean, he even scored for the under-21s for England last night, a great goal. So that's been a success. On the other side, Trev, Fabio Carvalho, I think he's got about 12 minutes or something stupid like that at Red Bull. It's been pretty much an unmitigated disaster. And that's even been when Red Bull have had bad games, injuries, all those types of things. So I asked David Lynch about this, and I've been, inquiring a few others, because I asked him on the show on Monday, and he said Liverpool are being really evasive about whether there's any type of recall option. They're kind of like just not answering that when it's being asked directly. But as we said, even if there's not necessarily that, it's fully feasible there could be a situation where these two parties sit down and say, lads, this just ain't working, is it? This ain't working for us. Why are we paying his wages? This ain't working for us, maintaining his value, etc. So I'd kind of be surprised if something didn't happen there. Just my gut, but we'll have to see as time goes on. Bobby Clark, he's had a few injuries, but there was a bit of surprise he didn't go on deadline day. I don't know if it's almost rewinding the clock back, Trev. There were 7 offers in, as we said, for him on deadline day, and the club made the call not to let it happen. And you look since, and he hardly played any minutes, and then he got an injury. Was that the right call? I think we all know the answer to that. So there is expectation that championship clubs especially will come back and knock in for him. And then the weirdest one, which probably as the season started, we'd have thought no chance. There is an expectation from a lot of the journos that, not accepted, but it's important to say this, Ben Doak loan offers are going to come in, because he's really, for all the heralding, and I think he's a great talent. This isn't playing him down in any way, but we know he's really not played that many minutes, has he, Trev? And even in the Europa, he's got taken off, not too much in the Cup, all that type of thing. So Liverpool have got some really distinct decisions to make. I mean, I could guess, I'm not sure about Doak, what they'll do, but there is especially the Patch Jones are really clear on that. There's that full expectation there will be offers. So January, they are going to have a lot of decisions to make about the right moves, temporary moves for the young stock.
Talk to me briefly as well about your take on Carvalho. Seeing as we're here, we might as well just jump around this. And the reason I ask is because there was some talk that perhaps he was a little bit not quite the fit personality-wise for a Klopp squad. Now, again, I will admit that what I heard there was along the lines of rumour from usually trusted sources, whatever that means. But, I put a bit of weight behind it. And I wondered then, when you could see how little he was featuring with us and the fact that the loan move was arranged, whether or not it's like, okay, let's get you trained up to a certain level, or let's get you a certain level of exposure, and then we move you on as an asset that we've made maybe 100% profit on, because I think that would be very doable with a lad like that. If he did better, it would be infinitely more, orders of magnitude more that you can make on a footballer like that. And we've done it in the past. We've seen the likes of the lads who've moved on for big money to different clubs who are willing to spend it. I'm wondering if Carvalho comes back, would there be any real point to it if that angle of things is actually true? Because he'll just come back, he'll be around the squad. I wonder, really, is there the likelihood of a more appropriate loan with more appropriate setting and minutes available?
Yeah, to me, if he's coming back, Trev, it's a full 360 in and out before you blink. It really is. I think the club knows this has been, especially for the kid, it's been an unmitigated disaster the last sort of 6 months, because everyone remembers just before he left, he did that interview and talking about how Klopp hadn't been clear. And I don't know who's his PR team, but he should have sacked them straight away, or his agent, who let him do that interview. So that didn't come across well there. There's already we don't play with a 10. We know that's his position. So the whole point you wanted to see with this loan is go to a good team, a decent standard, but one where you're going to play the 10, you're going to play every week, and it's good enough to so you'll shine, i.e. get that transfer value up, like you said, probably ready for a sale. That's what my gut told me. All that's gone to pot, hasn't it? The smartest way to retrieve this for me, and again, I'm not even fully sure on how it works with how many clubs you can play for in a season. That might play a part now. But if it's all doable, you get him back, Trev, and you know there will be a multitude of takers at like decent teams in the Prem and in the top end of the Championship. He was Championship Player of the Year, wasn't he? So they'd be swimming. But I even think something like that is not the worst thing for him, because if he starts scoring goals, a bit shining, and you look at the examples of the past, like Morton recently, Harvey Elliott at Blackburn when he had that loan especially, Ryan Brewster when he went to Swansea, it could really bring his value back up, because, I'm not being funny, if he's hanging around the first team squad, is he going to be one of the training cones? Let's be honest, is what it is a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, he can join the potential list of 7,008, the potential list of lads who can't get a game on the flanks. It doesn't make any sense. So yeah, that's going to be interesting to watch. And like you, I fully expect something to happen with that in that regard. Now, you've got a story here about Archie Gray, and I've heard a lot about this kid. And Liverpool being linked to this kid, and I've always, every single time I've heard it, Dave, it's been from one of those sources that you wouldn't put any store by, and so I imagined it was quite fanciful, but there were big numbers being talked about for a comparatively young footballer. So he's obviously highly rated. Maybe you just fill in people on who he is, where he is, and why it would be that he would have the profile that would link him to a potential Liverpool move, even if that's not real. And do please step in on the validation or otherwise of those rumours.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, he is a real young talent, Archie Gray. Normally a midfielder, but can also play right back, good on the ball. All sounding a bit familiar, isn't it, Trev, in regards to certain things? So that plays a part.
Are you that person who has everything? The coolest merch and those must-have fan threads? Well, over at our Anfield Index shop, we've gone that extra mile when it comes to pimping up your Liverpool collection. From our popular range of bespoke design t-shirts, sweaters, hoodies and hats, to our signature edition mugs, prints and coasters, all provided with fast worldwide shipping. We have something for every red. We also stock official LFC merchandise and are licensed with the Premier League and UEFA to sell official iron-on shirt badges and sleeve patches. As a listener to this podcast, you can get 10% off everything with coupon code AIPRO10. Just head over to AnfieldIndex.shop or find us on Etsy by searching for Anfield Index.
There's a couple of issues to it. Obviously, everyone knows since the work permit laws, everything was adjusted. Liverpool have got a lot more domestically, and that's why we've seen, others come in like Diallo and Yoni, I think it's pronounced. We've had to look in that market for good value. It's made us really focus on that. The big problems are not around the player, but around what he can bring, because the Mail article said 40 million quid. Now, that's big money for someone who's unproven in the Premier League. It really is, without a real... And I don't want to be harsh on the player, but if you look at Gravenberch, he had pedigree in Holland, a bit in Germany, international. Archie Gray doesn't have that. The pedigree he has is he comes from the Gray footballing family, like Eddie Gray, Leeds heritage. So he's well loved there. That club adore him. If you speak to Leeds fans, they cannot praise him high enough. The other problem side comes into the mix, Trev, is I bet you can negotiate a contract extension as we speak with Leeds and do a new deal. So it suits the agent to put a little story like that there at the same time, isn't it? So that comes into the mix. So it's kind of a double-edged part to it that when you speak to anyone, the journal, when you ask the questions, they say, are Liverpool interested? Yes. They've watched this kid. They know about him. He's one of the players like on the big list, if you want to call it that. We know his abilities. We like him. Do we 40 million quid like him? No. And you think it's like, especially with the midfielders we've got, and I think he's a real talent and he could play a lot of, roles and people like him. And I understand that. It's that fee that makes the journos go, and I understand this. 40 million quid, that's not a Liverpool move, is it really, in that sense? So that's why it's player liked, but overall as a rumour, being a bit poo-pooed, to be honest.
Yeah, fair enough. I think you've laid it out really well there. I do like the idea of us targeting the very best up-and-comers. Excuse me. I've heard a lot of talk about... Not a lot of talk, sorry, excuse me, I take that back. I've heard a couple of people talk about the concept of perhaps us adopting just such a policy. And most of us who are short-term want to win now type people, because we've got these wonderful lads who are at the end of their times, maybe. And when I say at the end, they're maybe in their last couple of years with Liverpool. You want to maximise their ability while we have them and they're operating at their highest level or near it. So you want lads who are first team ready, I guess is my point. But it is very tempting, isn't it, to think about maybe we get a Gray here, we get another guy there, another profile of football over here, all these really highly rated kids. Now, of course, there is one area where, to be honest, there aren't too many of that ilk in the younger bracket where we could go and say we need to recruit. You know as well as I do that area is, of course, the magical ball-winning holding midfielder type, our Fabinho replacement. And I was listening to Dave there talking on his Daily Red today about how, look, there aren't any Rodris knocking about, fair, but that there are plenty of lads who would very much fit at least that profile for us. In conjunction with the rest of our midfielders, maybe the whole him not being Rodri wouldn't matter. Maybe there's a more magical mix between us with Dom and Alexis and a really good ball winner, high energy, intelligent defending midfielder who could block some lanes and make some interceptions and put his foot in when necessary. Maybe that midfield works in a more magical way than even what City have. It would be just lovely to see it. So as a result, a lot of people were pinning their hopes on Andre. And we followed his run with Fluminense to the Copa Libertadores final. People getting very excited about him as a footballer, and I completely get it. I really do get it. But again, if you watch what you can see of him, I think I saw a wonderful clip where he made a brilliant tackle in a defensive situation, kind of last man back. At least people thought it was a brilliant tackle. And so they immediately then just assume he's exactly what we need, but he's not. And so he seems to be very much headed towards Fulham with the rumours we're hearing. But there are more South American targets. Whether they're ours or not, I'm not sure. What are you hearing in terms of the concreteness of the links with the likes of Moscardo and Beraldo? And let people know who they are and what level they're operating at.
Yeah, it's interesting that, and David Lynch mentioned this, very much Liverpool have been looking in the South American market more in the last sort of 12 months. It almost feels like they've had that eureka moment. Actually, there might be value, and actually, is it cheaper to get them rather than just buy them for 70, 80 million or whatever down the line? That type of element, not become the third link in the chain, go direct to the source, as it were. So that's played a part. I mean, Yeah, the Andre thing. I mean, that's been bubbling along. There'd been a real suspicion. It was, I mean, even Tim Vickery had said, yeah, he expects Liverpool to happen. But someone's been this turnaround since that Libertadores final, like you said. And now all the suggestions are, no, Liverpool had always moved on. Fulham looks the likely destination, or Premier League, if not. So I think we could just put a big cross against Andre in that regard coming in. And I'm not as gutted as people, because like you said, I think we're talking more of a deep-lying playmaker rather than destroyer necessarily, or the sitter, or after, however you want to put it. But interestingly, the other ones that have been called out, Lucas Beraldo. So he's a left-footed centre-back from Sao Paulo. And Tom Robertson, our resident South American expert, said he is the gold dust in South American and European football. A left-footed centre-back that can play a pass over the top as well, bring it back, calm and composed. You know where we're going with this, Trev, don't you? But, so people love that stuff. They absolutely love it, no doubts at all. Problem is, as he said, South American football is slow by its nature. The build-up is skillful. So it's a huge leap to go from Sao Paulo to Liverpool. Let's be honest, the jump is massive to the top of the Premier League. He's only young. I think he's 18. So, again, he's not got that sample size that Liverpool look for. So that's where you put sort of the crosses in the column that way as well. Moscardo, the one for Corinthians. Now, again, not a destroyer. I don't want to play him down, but a physical midfielder. Let's say that's described by Tom, in sort of the sixth role, good on the ball, liked by a lot of Premier League teams. Now, the big development this week, Trev, is his agent has come out and said, he's headed somewhere in Europe this January, probably. That's what we're pushing. The problem is a couple of things. Again, 18, very, very raw. And whatever the talent is, I like the player, don't get me wrong, from what I've seen. Still a massive jump in it, Trev. Corinthians to Liverpool, whatever anyone says, especially at such a young age without the sample games that Liverpool look for. So very much, as Lynch and a few others said, Liverpool like him. Liverpool have been monitoring him. Biggest issue is, number one, is he ready? There's a lot of question marks there to go straight in. And the second one is a lot of other clubs like Moscardo, especially Chelsea and Arsenal, they've been watching him. So feel like, again, of like pissing on everyone's chips, so to speak, a little bit tonight. But that is the general thing we're getting back, that yes, Liverpool have been watching it. Yes, they like these players. Yes, they watch them. And yes, there's interest. That's still very different to making a move in January. And the indications are, and we know journalists get lied to, we don't always get the exact info, but the indications are light isn't moving for. That's probably the best way of putting it.
Let's just take a ginger sidestep away from that pile of urine-soaked chips and ask ourselves, have we heard anything else? Let's put the South American thing on the shelf. I know you haven't put this down here, but the same stories are going to keep coming back because of the urgency of this. And you know what's really going to make an impact on that, Dave, is the next couple of weeks, starting with City. And if we get our arses handed to us at City, which, I mean, any team could, and our record at City is fucking appalling in recent years. In the Klopp era, it's pretty dreadful. It's going to kickstart stories, whether it should or not, because that game we know is not the be all and end all. But then another ropey result or two between now and Christmas, and you know that those stories are going to pick up savage amounts of traction. And the only thing that will hold those stories off is if in that run of maybe patchy results, our man McAllister has really risen to the task in a way that, like, he hasn't been fully able to so far. And that seems unlikely because it's not that McAllister is not a wonderful footballer. It's the things you're asking him to do are not his speciality things. And so I can see a huge amount, whether even if we stay on track or not, depending on McAllister's form, I can see a huge amount of chit chat around this. Again, you hear occasionally the Doucouré thing come up again. You hear occasionally the kid at Villa, Boubacar Kamara. You hear, I think, very fanciful stuff given where they are and their ambitions currently, even the likes of Bissouma being mentioned. And again, that's just because they're probably the best in the younger bracket that one of the top two clubs, which we patently are, could go and pluck. Is there anything at all of a local rumour variety that you're hearing from the patch guys?
Genuinely, I would love to say, yeah, like there's a Kamara release clause, there's a Decore, something in the works, because listen, we all want that six, don't we, Trev? Or even sort of a left-sided defender, especially people have been exasperated with the Robbo injury and what that might mean. I mean, at least the good news was Tsimikas just didn't play last night to avoid a booking, so that allayed those fears. But to proper take a number two on the chips, the short answer is no. Just being honest, like every journo, and I love to harass, harangue, message, all that type of thing. The general vibe, for want of a better modern phrase, is unless they're doing an endo style completely under the radar again, which is always hopeful, Liverpool can do that. There's a real difference now. Summer, we know, we were carpet shopping, as I call it, weren't we? We were getting the quotes from all over, Trev, and then we were making the moves we were seeing. January at the moment, we're not even out for the samples, Trev, as it stands. You know what I mean? We're not at carpet right. We're not at carpet world. We are just at home doing nothing, I'm afraid. And I'd love to be more positive. And hopefully as it comes towards December and Jan, we're doing names, we're talking. But as it stands right now, the general vibe is it's going to be a quiet Jan. We'll see.
We're basically carpet shopping on the internet, which is not a great idea. And also, I'm quite happy to move away from those chips at this stage. They're in an awful state. Can I just, for the sake of listeners, in case they don't know, I do very much appreciate the fact that you're so dedicated to trying to ferret out information. I understand that it's not always the most easy thing in the world to do, because people can be either receptive or not, and you just got to have a brass neck about it and keep going. And you, my friend, have what we call around here a neck like a jockey's bollocks. So I fully, if I could take this hat off, I would take it off, because it obviously makes for great content for ourselves, even if it is only to destroy the chips of our listeners. Next, we move to the bigger scene in the Premier League, and why wouldn't you start with Newcastle? Now, there's a story here that's going on around Neves that I'm not sure an awful lot of people have looped themselves into in terms of understanding it fully. It's very significant. So if you wouldn't mind sort of giving us a little bit of a breakdown on this whole vote that occurred, where the motion was rejected 13-7, and there was 14 required for this to pass. You even know the clubs involved and how they voted. I'd love you to break this down for us, because I'll admit to being I've seen occasional tweets from people who are reliable sources of info. So I understand the general concept, but the finer detail and who was involved and why you think it didn't go through, very, very interesting, because there's a bit of a whiff off this, Dave.
Oh, Trev, this has politics, regulations, everything involved, drama, mystique, the lot. So this is debated by the Premier League. I'm sure, as people know, 20 clubs. So for a motion essentially to be passed with the Premier League, there needs to be 14 vote for the motion. There'll always, there's always clubs that are against, but 14 to pass the motion, as it were. Now, this has been fascinating from a political aspect, Trev, because I'm sure everyone's seen about Everton, the points deduction. Everyone's seen about the Crouch report and the need for football as independent regulator. The Premier League has been big, Trev, on saying recently, we don't need an independent regulator. We do well with the money, we're fair, which is a load of bollocks, as we know, type of thing. But they preach that. And so all the leaks to the press have been this motion to close the loophole, which we'll get to, was going to shut. Now, the loophole, which they wanted to really shut down, had centred around specifically an example with Newcastle, the PIF links. So essentially, it was around multi-club ownership, i.e., we wanted to shut down loans where the owner of the club was the same person, or there was a direct link that way, i.e., the multi-club model, the ownership groups, all those types of things. Because the premise had been, well, what's going to stop like Newcastle taking Ruben Neves from a PI, from Saudi, PIF links, that type of thing? It looks questionable. It's not a good look for the Premier League. What people forget is, Trev, The Premier League teams are motivated by their own agendas and their own aims, and they don't genuinely give that much of a shit what people think because they control the money. So,
hello, I'm here to annoy you. I'm here to annoy you into listening to more of me and more of others on EPL Index. We don't just have the Anfield Index stuff. We've got EPL Index as well, which covers the entirety of the Premier League. And we have 3 podcasts and a whole bunch of really good writing on EPLindex.com. The podcasts are my own two-footed podcast, which is every day at 4 p.m., Monday through Friday, covering the whole league. We have A Tad Predictable, hosted by Tadiwa. You know Tadiwa, he does Anfield Index. He presents A Tad Predictable before every Premier League match week. And then Kevin DeVries and his crew on the EPL Roundtable, they're every week after the Premier League match week. So make sure you listen to everything we're doing on EPL Index and follow us there on Twitter at EPL Index. Thank you. Bye-bye.
They didn't get the 14 clubs, did they? A lot of clubs objected to this. And Trev, people were surprised by this, that there's treachery in the Premier League. People are surprised by clubs like City, Everton, and others. We're not going to name them all, but voting against it. But let's have a think. City, the City Group model, as in multi-clubs. Funny that. Everton, who are Everton's new soon-to-be owners, the 777 Group, who also own, hold on, Standard Liège, Sevilla. Funny that, Trev. Then Palace voted against it. Hold on. One of the major shareholders in Palace also owns Lyon, Botafogo. Funny that. You see where I'm going with this type of thing, Trev? People are fascinated that this hasn't passed and it's treachery. It's the Premier League. It's a cutthroat Wild West. They take care of their own interests. The fascinating thing now, Trev, is January. We could be saying, Newcastle's injury crisis has got even worse. Dan Burn's gone down, as we know, for a few months. And just say a few players pick up injury knocks. Can you imagine? We could be doing a pod one week and going, Newcastle, Trev, have loaned 6 players back from the PIF clubs. Koulibaly's back to cover. Neves is back to cover. Riyad Mahrez. Alisson Maximum doesn't even need to rent his house out anymore. We could literally be talking about these things. And even, Trev, look at Everton and what's happened then with the points deduction. If 777 get it all approved, ratified, blah, 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 imagine that, Everton are skint, they've got no money. Hold on. Everton have just loaned 3 Sevilla players Campos and some good ones. Do you know what I mean? The problem is now people will go, it's shocking that's happening. It might be, but they had a chance to stop it. They chose not to. And the ones who chose not to did it in their own self-interest. So why anyone's complaining or thinks the Premier League can regulate itself is bobbins. But yeah, it's good in a good way for us, though. It's going to bring some drama, and people are going to be stunned when, Mahrez, they all rock up having Benzema at loan at Newcastle and stuff with the strike. It's going to bring us some stories. Do you know what I mean?
Well, when the lunatics are investigating the asylum and the running of it, you know that it's going to be carnage, as you say. And let's be honest, Dave, if Liverpool Football Club owned Brescia, say that was part of the portfolio of our owners, so we had skin in the fight, we had a dog in the fight, we'd like to think we'd be more noble, but would we? Let's be honest about that. Now, on that topic, actually, just a related one, sideways step, and I've forgive me for popping this at you, but I've seen this, I think, thoroughly unsubstantiated story going around where there's a picture of a smug-looking John Henry always attached to it, and that we are chit-chatting and trying to lead some sort of move into furthering the investigation in the city. And it's marked with an exclusive, and I don't know who the lad is, and it doesn't seem like a reputable source, and it's not backed up anywhere else. But the chit chat that goes on, and all you've got to do is mention something once, and then all of a sudden it takes hold. And I've in the past I've been guilty of falling for nonsense myself and having something retweeted and saying how ridiculous it was before I even went to fully check out the source. Now I tried to make sure that that's not me anymore. The story I'm talking about. What have you heard about it? And am I right in my general feelings about it, do you think?
Even better than that, Trev, I can shut this down completely for you. So, yeah, I won't know him by naming. They quoted a well-known football finance figure, let's say that, as the source to say, as you mentioned, Liverpool are leading the charge against Manchester City, and they're the ones wanting it done before next season. And then the stupidest thing that website did, and that Twitter account, is if you're going to lie about what the person said, don't copy tweet them in or at them in the actual tweet type of thing. Because then that specific football finalist journalist comes back and says, no, I didn't. I've never said that in my life type of thing. And then even better, other sites start quoting that and it builds round. And all you saw last time, I'm sure people have seen this as well on social media, was, bless him, that football finance journalist going, I didn't say this, I didn't say this, I didn't say this, followed by I've told this site to take it down and stop saying it's me, or was I going to take action? So in simple terms, Trev, follow that under never happened, not true, but makes a good story. Sometimes the lie's enjoyable, isn't it? But absolute nonsense. Yeah, not true at all.
Yeah, I mean, again, exactly. It's a bit of crack. But it just had this whiff of didn't happen of the year award, as you say. Next crowd to move to for our jollies is Arsenal. By the way, don't worry, folks. We've got United coming up as well, and Chelsea. You gotta love all this. Arsenal are up next. I just want to focus for a second on one thing. I mean, the comical Ramsdale situation and Ramsdale's outfit being platformed on all these podcasts and stuff. And then there is the story that may have a potential impact on their team, which is the potential departure of Partey. Around about those two stories, what can you tell us on the Arsenal front?
Trev, it's never, ever good for a player when his dad is doing the talking for him. And that's true on Twitter publicly. Ramsdale's dad is talking more than Ramsdale. Like, if ever, like, Dad, will you just shut up, needed to happen. But, I mean, it's quite clear after Arteta's like, I've got 2 number ones nonsense at the start of the season. It's quite clear that Ramsdale's number 2, Raya's 1. So we all knew that lie, but there we go. Trev, I mean, Ramsdale needs to shut his dad up. We keep saying it's been traded, they've let my boy down, blah, blah, blah. That ain't helping anyone, so they need to sort that. The other big thing, Trev, is, I don't know if anyone saw the pod that Budweiser did. It's amazing. Ian Wright was on it with Ramsdale. And Ian Wright's face was beautiful because they were just asking Ramsdale about how he concentrates during games. It's unbelievable. If you haven't seen the clip, go and watch it, people. You've got to see this clip. Ramsdale goes, yeah, I have to have about 2 or 3 minutes of madness a game because I can't concentrate for 90 minutes. And Ian Wright's just looking at him like, did he just say that? Yes, he just said that. Gosh. So literally Ramsdale goes into it fully as in like, no, I've got to interact with the crowd and they'll give me banter and I'll give it them back and do this. I've got to do that. And he doubles down on it again because I'm not capable of concentrating for 90 minutes in a game.
Wow.
He'll be an author in the future, how not to be a number 1. And he'll have a chapter on get your dad to do the speaking. And he'll have a chapter on what to say on a podcast. But for that, I mean, can you see anything? But, I mean, he's either going to sit on the bench just talking to himself, apparently, and carrying on. Or, if he's got a smart agent, he's saying, like, yes, we need to get you out. And if you could shut up and your dad could shut up, that would really help me for business at the same time. So that's that one, which is comical. The Partey thing, I mean, try and steer carefully around this because we know there's a lot of talk and rumours, but there's basically nothing coming publicly on Partey. He's just kind of not playing, and there's been like, he's not available for different reasons. I mean, he missed a European tie away, which Arsenal just didn't actually venture an answer for, which I won't sort of go into too much. But long story short, full expectation that Arsenal will entertain options for Thomas Partey in January. But yeah, we'll probably not say too much more about that. But the Ramsdale one, insane. I've never heard anything like that. And you thought Jordan Henderson had bad PR, people. I think Aaron Ramsdale needs to look at his team as well. But yeah, makes for good talking for us, don't get me wrong. But yeah, all drama at Arsenal as ever, Trev.
It's great. That admission from look, he's a young man. Young men say stupid things. God knows I said stupid things back when I was young. In my 40s, but I still didn't. The lack of self-preservation in that comment is daft. It's amazing, especially when you're dealing with a stick up the butt type manager like Arteta, who's going to be po-faced and seriousness above all. He's from the Pep school of fucking zero humor, sour-faced, prissy nonsense. So I tell you what, I sincerely hope for Ramsdale's sake that someone like Colin Wanker comes back out of retirement and maybe takes a club somewhere so he can hire him and have top bants with the crowd, because that's a mad one. And as you say, the interesting thing about the Partey story, regardless of the context of it, is his absence from that squad might be interesting in the second half of the season when it comes to the nuts and bolts of the football. Let's take a look at United, because there's more big news here. You mentioned earlier on the Everton ownership issue looking like it's moving apace. The United story just will never stop, and people are... even today, I've seen not the usual suspects, not the Gary Neville brigade, talking about the years and years of mismanagement by the Glazers, about how to reconnect with the fans, how important it is for us for us, as in the people are saying that if we're going to be involved, we must reconnect with the fans, go back to the pre-Glazer era. There's some things happening here under 4.5 Hag that makes you wonder, really. So the first thing is Jordan Sancho. That is just a shit show on a level I can't fully understand. And maybe I'm not privy to all the facts, but to me it seems quite one-sided in terms of the way that player is being treated. When you think of the comparative behaviours of other people, we may have mentioned one or two of them just very recently, and how they just get to play for their clubs anyway. Lateness, which is all I've heard him accused of, seems something that should be very solvable. But there are clubs, obviously, who'll be massively interested in that kid. We were. But there's also the added uncertainty here about the new ownership and what that will mean. Most of us only know fleeting things about it, but I trust that you have a bit of extra information which will enlighten me and our listeners as to what's actually going on at that club at the moment.
Yeah, you can get loads on the Radcliffe stuff, and we have managed to get asking around. For the Sancho one, I mean, this comes back to, as one journalist said, it's just a situation that seems to have escalated, and now neither parties can back down. It's gone too far that obviously Ten Hag questioned him, the training. He came out publicly and said, that's not the case. I'm training fine. And it always had the feeling early doors of they can put this to bed. The player can apologise. The manager can say, I shouldn't have, and it all sorted and we all move on. And that's what needed to do. But not at the circus down the road, because that just doesn't happen. So it's escalated, had Ten Hag's not back down. And now we're at the stage, everyone's expecting him. I mean, apparently Saudi have already sounded no interest in going there, apparently, but already sounded out. But Juventus, Sakine, Dortmund, obviously he's loved there, isn't he, for what he did, taking him back. So there's almost a big expectation around the journos that they'd be stunned if Sancho is still at Old Trafford come the end of January. So we've got to get prepared for that in some way. That's going to be on the docket. Oh, the ownership thing. I love a biblical story, Trev, and it takes me back to the Council of Antioch, decided what was in the Bible, and obviously put the deity and all these types of things, and all the things they left out. What they left out was when they turned around and after, Judas had betrayed him, given him the kiss, they left out that quote where he turns around and goes, "What the fuck is going on here?" They left that out from Jesus. And that is exactly what's happening on the Radcliffe thing. This has been going on forever. The Qatar bowed out. Everyone and his dog has known that this 25% deal starting to get done, in the bizarreness of, he's going to own 25%, but he'll control all football operations because the Glazers are just in such a mess and can't service it, and the roof's caving in, the water's cut, all that type of thing. Bizarre. This goes one of two ways, and I mean this. If Sir Jim is smart, what he does is if he does take control of football operations, and there's been talk, and there's a little bit of nervousness to me on this, Trev, that he will be smart enough to go, I've got the money, but not the football smarts. So what I'm going to do is put in like a top sporting director straight away. And this is where we start to panic, isn't it? Because you've heard names like Michael Edwards, and just give him the power to run it. And then you're like, shit, no. Even Paul Mitchell's been talked about. You're thinking, no, I wouldn't like that still. You know, just football people making the football decisions with real money at United, smart ones. Don't like that at all. Here's where the hope and the drama comes in, Trev. There's a thing called the Ineos curse for teams that he takes control of. Like, he absolutely, the Davis Cup team, Ben Ainsley, nosedived it with interfering. He also, Ineos, like the way they do things. Sir David Brailsford, now you've got to be respectful in that era for like cycling. He's known as the guy, no doubts. But this feels like, do you remember when Clive Woodward came in at Southampton? Everyone went, that will never work. I don't care how good he is at rugby, that will never work. There's a thing in sports which journalists talk about called the Ineos curse, that Sir Jim just gets too involved because he's got that ego and that billionaire thing to like almost Sweeney Todd style. So just let the football people do the football things and give them the money. There's a big suspicion that David Brailsford's going to come in, that Ineos men are going to come in. Now, that could be beautiful because you might have a sporting director and Ineos people and all falling out. So they could build the drama. However, they're trying to get all this done before Thanksgiving, the big American holidays. And happy Thanksgiving to all our American fans that are listening. But it's dragging on, and people are expecting it all to get done before January, isn't it? But then it takes time to ratify the fit and proper people, all that type of thing. But the expectation is, Trev, building it up to a crescendo, that money will then be spent in January. Because what team needs to spend more money than United? Of course, the team that have spent fortunes on crap players and players that don't work. So they are going to be beautiful for us come January. Now, hopefully, and I mean this, hopefully there is not a Michael Edwards style figure making sensible decisions and sensible buys on big, that type. We don't want that. What we want is big stories. United need a centre-half. They're going to spend big on 80 million. Who have they gone for? Nathan Collins at Wolves. Something like that. Now, that is not to dig out Nathan Collins in case he's listening, please, just to say that, don't get me wrong. But mad United-style decisions. I don't know which way this is going to go, Trev. I really don't. But it's going to give us plenty to talk about, mate. Put it that way, throughout January. No doubts at all.
I have the exact same inclination as you. I want this fucking shit show to continue as long as possible. It gives me tremendous well-being. And I make no bones about it. I spent literally decades of my adult life being condescended to by some of the worst lads possible. And so watching that thing just rumble along with wheels coming off left, right, and centre is tremendous. And when you think actually that Ineos, one of their new projects or recent projects, is the Ineos Grenadier as a car head. I'm very, very big into this. And I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, it looks a little bit like a Range Rover. I can see how it's like a bit like a Defender. Yeah, I see that. And I'm looking at them, but I think it's destined to do not quite as well as people think. And perhaps the wheels will come off that quite literally as well. So as you say, very, very well worth watching there. And it's going to be a great source of story for us, as will the Everton thing, because it's just, who doesn't love a sort of a crazy ownership scenario? And speaking of crazy ownership scenarios, we have the simplest of segues to Todd Boehly and Chelsea. And, Pochettino's in situ, and I think maybe recent weeks have probably given the respite required for him, because it was going very, very badly, to the extent that even someone with the, I think perhaps excessively elevated reputation that Pochettino has, he's clearly a solid manager, but I'm not sure about this. People seem to slot him in a category that I'm not sure he fits in terms of track record and wins and stuff. But even a guy of his reputation was starting to look very vulnerable and fragile. And you think about a window coming up, and you would also think that probably the one thing that Chelsea don't need to do is further destabilise that playing squad. But Sweeney Todd's there. And how is Sweeney Todd going to curb his Sweeney Todd instincts if he has Sweeney Todd veto over said decisions? We don't know the full makeup of the club there, but it seems as if that guy can do what he wants to do when it comes to the money. So Pochettino could be looking at a bit of a shit show, unless, is he the first manager that somehow, suddenly they're going to listen to? What's your take on all this?
This is a public appeal, Trev. This is a public appeal to one of our favourite billionaires in one of the most disgusting clubs ever. This is an appeal to say to a man with a George Washington-style, revolutionary flick-over-style haircut, be you. Now, there may be a new sexy Argentinian man in your life who, has got a bit of a glow to him and a bit of style, a bit of panache. But remember, this man didn't even win the league with PSG and all that money. This is a man who's come from Tottenham. Sorry, Spurs fans, but he's come from Tottenham before. This is a man who doesn't have a track record of success. So when this man comes into your office and starts talking about, let's keep the squad settled, we've got numbers, we've got Nkuku coming back, we're starting to play football, trust your gut, Sweeney Todd, and ignore everything he says. We've loved you on this show. We've loved you buying players you don't need. We've loved you ignoring all the standard football advice. We've loved you trying to do American-style trades with players in different clubs. We've loved you trying to even bring in a 39th game for extra transfers and squads. Sweeney, be you. Do not let us down this window. Do not be influenced by Pochettino. He's got your club mid-table. He's not the one. Listen to that gut. Bye. That is what we want for January. We rely on you. Do not let us down.
He can't let us down. It's been a staple of our show since we started. We need Todd to Todd. Just do you, as you say. Continue on your merry way. Maybe even oust that guy. Get rid of Pochettino. Who needs him? There's better managers out there, Sweeney. You know you can find them. What about Lampard? He's on the go. Ask him. There's so much joy that we can potentially mine from this. And those three clubs in particular are going to give us a lot of that joy, I think, going forward. It's hard to see how it can't be a winner for us. We have around about 10 minutes left. And in that 10 minutes, we're going to go through our European section. And why wouldn't we start, I guess, with PSG and freaking Kylian Mbappe? As you say, I'll let you reintroduce your patented nickname for him. But this story has gotten to a level which is beyond farcical now. And I wonder, Jesus, Dave, by the way, please tell me you saw the pictures of him during the week in mocked up Liverpool kits and the crazy lunatics that are actually thinking that that is possible. And if you don't think they're real, if you think that that's just, these people are just, it's just some troll. Why are you responding to him? Why are you giving him? I'm not. But I looked in the comments afterwards, and all these apparently sentient humans think that this is a thing that could happen. It's fucking bananas. Explain to us why it will never happen because of what's going on there at the moment. This ongoing thing between them and Real and his contract and his bonuses and all this nonsense. Talk to us about what the current story is there with PSG and Mbappe.
PSG are obviously adopting the model that if he rejects you 272 times, the 273rd goes a charm. That's all I can assume. It's just absolute nonsense. Like, they put his mum on the board, Trev. Do you know what I mean? Type of thing. Like, my mum, bless her, is good at sewing and she does a mean roast. I wouldn't ever ask her about transfers or football opinions. Do you know what I mean? She's not one of the people I ask, bless them. But they are still pandering to, for all my cultural followers, Le Petit Shite, as we know him. Like, I cannot believe they're still trying to do this. They're taking it as a good sign that he's going to apparently forego his bonuses, because he did renew in the last 12 months. It's a big money, as though he's a good kid, cracking set of lads. You pay the man absolute fortunes. He's the player why almost Jurgen invented the no dickhead test, but all of a sudden, because he high-fives Simicast in the game, he's coming to us, lads. Like, I love hope and I love optimism, but like, we're living in cloud cuckoo land. We're breaking the structure. I mean, he'd be on a free. Can you imagine what signing on fee, wages, all the things? It's just not going to happen. I mean, the other talk is Real are now even looking at moving on, Trev. Like, Musiala's now, there's a big story. Real came out publicly and said, no, we're not, any of those rumours that we've done a deal, absolute nonsense. There's genuine quite a few articles. Mars has even said Real are moving on from Mbappe. So
I don't need a VPN. I've got nothing to hide. This is what I used to tell myself before I hooked up with LibertyShield.com. Not only is my home internet now fully encrypted, but I can now access all the websites I want, whenever I want, and do so from absolutely anywhere. As a Liverpool fan, I love to know I can now watch every match, regardless of whether it's on UK TV or not. My Liberty Shield VPN makes sure nothing is blocked and guarantees me super fast streaming speed throughout that match. You can get connected right now with their software package, which includes a 48-hour no-obligation free trial and instant access to their apps for Apple, Android, Fire TV, PC, Mac and Android TV. Or go a step further like I have and get one of their pre-configured VPN routers. These small but powerful devices allow you to easily connect every device in your home to VPN, making it the perfect solution for smart TVs, Mac boxes and games consoles. Visit LibertyShield.com today and use coupon code AIVPN25 to get 25% off at checkout.
Why people are linking us, just get it out of your head. So everyone's entitled to their opinion, but no chance. Do not be surprised if an extension gets signed at PSG for the stupidest amount of money ever, because he's turned down Saudi. We know that. He had that option for ridiculous money beyond belief, but I wish I could tell you why PSG are still trying to renew him, but this will be part of January, Trev. I am telling you. Insane.
Well, I applaud their continued dedication to being part of the weird corner of our show and an ongoing story that makes no sense to anyone except the pair of gobshites involved, the Mbappe camp and the PSG camp. It's also strange. A club that generally are at least very, very functionally run is Bayern Munich. And with Bayern, there is always in and out. And behind the scenes, you often see tension. They like to have these kind of ex-players walking around, forming part of an old guard. They have their own version, I guess, of the boot room type thing going on at Bayern. A lot of the time, you see these old heads, and then all of a sudden there's a story and so-and-so's fallen out and he's had a strop and he's gone and blah, 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 and then move on to the next one. But Bayern, for all of that, they don't court controversy in terms of doing things that are clearly lunatic. Now, one lunatic move I've heard suggested is Leroy Sane back to Liverpool or City, and we're both neck and neck for Leroy Sane's signature. First of all, City, how could they possibly? Well, I guess they could because they're financially bulletproof, but it would be a decent sized fee. How could you justify that after getting rid of him in the first place? Sané to Liverpool, if there was a window for that, for me, that's long since passed. And again, you have to have a look at. I feel sorry for Sané in some ways. He seems to have had a sort of a Sadio Mane light experience, not quite as awful in terms of the conflict and being possibly an outsider or not fitting in, but it's not been great. So that's one story. But there's also other stories, including one about a guy that we have been linked to, and a lot of people are still very high on him for Liverpool, despite his age, and they're looking at centre-backs too. So what are we hearing around about the whole Bayern situation?
We actually loved them in the summer, and we're going to love them in January, I'm telling you, Trev, for the drama. Bayern is like, to take your expression, like someone has taken the boot room story and said, write it in the form of Julius Caesar, because they all knife each other in the back at the same time. It's absolutely beautiful what happened. And this is a bit aside, but if anyone's seen it and follows Tommy Tuchel on Twitter, there is a brilliant clip where he had a major sulk because Mateus and a few other Bayern stars were slagging them off on Sky.
Magic. It's beautiful.
Unbelievable. And he's just snippy and basically throws the mic down after they've beaten Dortmund. So they've added Tommy Tuchel and his spikiness into the mix just for our drama, which is beautiful. Now, I mean, there's a couple of things to run here through. Sane, forget it. He's this age, his injuries, this is all part of his contract renewal and his agent layering stories with a few people saying this is doable. City and Liverpool have got no interest in Leroy Sane. His age, his injuries, forget it. If you believe it, that's fine. But honestly, it's all part of an agent thing for a new contract. So get your shock faces there when probably Leroy Sane sounds a contract in Jan, Feb, something like that. That's going to happen. The other one, Paulinho. Yeah, they obviously they had him on last deadline day, didn't they, Trev? But they just couldn't get the paperwork done in time. The full expectation, because Tommy Tuchel wants a 6 and he didn't get it and he threw a straw, is that gets done on less money, though. There's been a lot of talk on that. Plettenberg, the old favourite, has been coming out and saying expected to get done, but on less money. So I'd be more surprised if that one doesn't go through. And then the other one, they've had centre-back injuries. It's not really working out with De Ligt, Moscardo, all that type of thing. He's talked about it because Tommy Tuchel talks about it publicly, as Bayern people do. Moscardo talked about it, had his struggles. That's the one. And it doesn't mean he'll go, but that's the one there's now a question mark against, and the German press are hot on this. Don't be surprised if Bayern pick up a centre-back. I mean, they've even been linked with Varane. Now he's had his falling outs at United, not being regular. So they will shop hard as well for a 6 and a centre-back. I'm probably thinking that if they get Paulinho, it makes your defence a bit more secure if you've got that protective wall in front of you. Don't get me wrong, Trev. But Bayern will be active. And then even the other day, Rummenigge, our good old friend, back from his jail stint as he is, talked about Ebel and didn't shut down the rumours to people. We've been linked with them, we're a sporting director, and they've been saying, Bayern are favourites because I'm on the board. They're saying, yeah, we've talked to Max. I have good relations with Max, but I'm not going to say what's going to happen. He loves to build the drama. Basically, Bayern's going to be good to follow in Jan, Trev, because it's the boot room boys with the Julius Caesar element of a nest of vipers knifing each other in the back. They will give us stories. Love it.
It's a tradition all this time at Bayern, and the guy who Tuchel was so miffed at, Lothar Matthäus, was the original and the best in terms of all of that. Lothar had a hotline to build back in the day, and he would give stories from the dressing room. And because of his unimpeachable status as German football god, he just got away with it. And he was able to do it because he was able to produce in the park and all that kind of thing. But yeah, tale as old as time at Bayern, and it will be interesting to watch. It's amazing how all the drama doesn't trip them up, though, in terms of their ongoing continued success, at least most of the time. Last story then, and we'll do this one quite briefly because we don't have too many specifics in this, but we can't finish without talking about Saudi Arabia and the potential moves. And it brings us full circle back to the story we started with Mo Salah and the inevitable nonsense that will occur as we near the transfer window. But there are some other stories. Who are you hearing about that might actually be, like, who's unsettled, who's in a situation, we may already have had one, who's in a situation where it might be as well for them to just go cash in there because things are going badly where they are. What do we know about potential disruption by the Saudi League in this window? Or will it not be so much an issue because of their own season? What are we thinking around this?
This is a fascinating one, and sort of asking around, I'll be honest, people have given opinions, say they're not certain, but completely different opinions. So some people have been along the lines of, now that Premier League decision, and also even names like Gabri Vega's maybe not done quite as well there, Jota, not our boy, but the former Celtic one. So there could be players moving one way. However, some Saudi experts that we've spoken to were saying, The Saudi League have got no interest in that. They want to carry on the accumulation of talent they can get, even in January, their next chance to build that brand. And obviously, in terms of the Olympic bid, which everyone knows about publicly, Riyadh season, so they've got, heavily into the boxing now as well, the big stars. So it's all that sports brand, as it's probably best to call it, with Saudi. So there's almost a suspicion that will happen. The long story short of this, Trev, is it's going to go one way, but no one's really sure. I genuinely wouldn't bet on this. It would not surprise me if the Saudis, keep trying to buy players from Europe, the Premier League, that type of thing. Wouldn't surprise me a bit. It also now wouldn't surprise me if, because of the links, and I'm speculating a bit here, but a Koulibaly, a Mahrez, a San Maximum ended up at Newcastle, that type of thing as well to help them. It wouldn't surprise me if Europe, other clubs looked at that as well for players that, have that quiet time in the Saudi gap, so to speak. But some journos will tell you, no, they want to protect the league. They want to protect, they want to grow, they want to bring the Riyadh brand and everything. Some will tell you, no, don't be surprised if it just switches a bit during Jan. Maybe the short answer is, don't know, Trev. Be interesting to watch though, won't it? And they will definitely, one way or the other, they will be part of Jan for us. No two ways about it.
Can't not be, even if it is for us to be saying, what's happening? Why is nothing happening? And maybe another interesting wrinkle there, Dave, is that those players that they want to accumulate or hang on to in the league who are unsettled, the likes of the ones you mentioned, perhaps they just move sideways. Because let's be honest, at the end of the day, these guys are playing, Jordan Henderson and Bobby Firmino and boys like that are playing in front of 600 people. So this is either going to be a long-term success or a fucking complete disaster and exposed as some form of PR, massive scale way of dressing their country up a little bit and putting some lipstick on a pig. We don't know how it's going to work out. We don't know what longevity this project has, but you would imagine, wouldn't you? Just to bounce the final question off you, that if they were serious about this project and developing the project, that those players who might be unsettled or not really doing what they wanted to do at a certain club, you'd imagine some of their chums in the league would say, we'll have him, in order to maintain the status. You'd imagine there'd almost be pressure from the league organisers and whoever's really, really behind the funding of this thing to say, hey, you're not going anywhere, pal. Let's move you over here. We'll give you an even bigger house and try your luck with this club. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I really think either's feasible, Trev. Like you said, some players, playing in front of the dog and duck, literally, and the duck being the second one in attendance. Yes, there's money, and they kind of knew, the element it was for money rather than passion. But I don't think the likes of Hendo ever signed up to play in front of 600 people. The other big thing that's one expert sort of told us is, people forget, but DAZN obviously took the rights, didn't they, for the Saudi League, thinking it was going to be a thing. The numbers have taken off a cliff since people started watching it. The only sort of, I don't know if it's caveat, but as is coming up soon, there's a lot of focus in Saudi on the Club World Cup. That's the big tournament for them, the exposure, the European teams they can play against. So that is a possibility, keep the players there, do that. Do you know what? I can genuinely put a case either way for this, Trev. I can generally put an argument on the table to say I wouldn't be surprised if they all migrate south, so to speak, for the winter and move across. I can also put a case to say, it wouldn't surprise me if they carry on. It's just so interesting to watch, but we are going to be talking about this in our show, so they will bring us drama one way or the other.
Bless them, in the same category as so many other people that we've spoken about in terms of clubs and individuals who will, one way or the other, be sent inveigling themselves into the news cycle. And guess who's going to be there to follow that news cycle? Myself and Dave will be, and teasing it out for you. But we got to go. we've gone over the hour, I think, for one of the first times ever. We tend to be very disciplined with our hour. We're coming up on an hour and 5 minutes by the time this finishes, and we will finish now with me saying thanks very much for your ears and your eyes if you're watching us in the video on this one. We've enjoyed it very much. It's always a great chat. So the main man I got to thank for this is the guy who puts the prep in, and I just managed to talk around the topics with him, Mr. Dave Davis. Thanks, Dave.
Loved it as ever, mate. Speak January time, eh?
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at anfieldindex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.
Sports Social Podcast Network.